The lasagna smelled like home. Mom had promised it over the phone, her voice warm and coaxing, luring me back to the suburban sprawl of Portland after weeks of dodging her calls. I'd caved, imagining a night of laughter, maybe even a rare, "I'm proud of you, Ren," from Dad. Instead, I sat at the polished cherrywood table, fork hovering over a plate of congealing noodles as my younger brother Carter leaned forward, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Just so we're clear, Ren," he said, smirking, "we wanted you to know now, so there's no confusion later. Everything goes to us." United States. Him and Harper, my twin siblings, 7 years younger and perpetually entitled. I froze, my heart thudding against my ribs. Harper's glossy lips curled into a matching smirk, her eyes glittering with self-satisfaction as she twirled a strand of auburn hair around her finger. The dining room fell silent, save for the distant hum of traffic beyond the cul-de-sac. My gaze darted to Mom, Diane, expecting a laugh, a correction, anything to prove this was a sick joke. But her smile had vanished, replaced by a defiant set of her lips. "Excuse me?" I managed, my voice shaking despite my effort to steady it. "What do you mean, everything?" "Exactly what he said, Ren," Mom interjected sharply, folding her arms across her chest. "Your father and I have decided to finalize our will, and we wanted you to hear it directly from us. The house, the lake cottage, all of it is going to Carter and Harper." Her words hit me like a sucker punch to the gut, and suddenly, the homemade lasagna, the one I'd driven an hour for, felt like lead in my stomach. I turned to Dad, Greg, desperate for some sign of hesitation, some hint this wasn't real, but his gray eyes stayed fixed on the silverware in front of him, avoiding mine altogether. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, until Dad finally spoke, his voice quiet, carefully controlled. "Ren, you have to understand our reasoning," he said, folding his hands slowly. "You've done extremely well for yourself. Your mother and I are proud of your career, the success you've built. Carter and Harper, well, they're still finding their footing. They need more support." Support. The word echoed in my skull, bitter and hollow. For years, I'd been their support, quietly, without complaint. The mortgage payments when Dad's hours got cut, Carter's endless tuition changes as he flitted between majors, Harper's whims and costly hobbies, all of it covered by me, Ren Abbott, the responsible oldest child. And now, this? I blinked hard, fighting the hot sting of tears prickling behind my eyes. "Support," I repeated, my voice low, trembling. "You mean the last 4 years I've spent paying your mortgage? The tuition bills I covered every time Carter switched schools? The $30,000 I put into renovating that lake cottage last summer so Harper could have her perfect Instagram getaway?" My fists clenched beneath the tablecloth, nails digging into my palms. "You're leaving me nothing because I made something of myself?" Mom sighed dramatically, shaking her head like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "This is exactly why we didn't want to tell you, Ren," she said, her tone dripping with exasperation. "You always bring it back to money. It's never about family with you." Heat surged into my cheeks, a wildfire of disbelief and hurt. Never about family? Every sacrifice I'd made, every canceled vacation, every late night balancing their books, had been for them, because they'd asked, because they'd drilled into me that family sticks together. Carter scoffed, leaning back in his chair and crossing his arms, his smugness unshaken. "You're acting like some martyr, Ren," he said, his voice sharp. "Nobody forced you to help. You just liked playing the hero." Harper laughed quietly, a cruel little sound, her eyes narrowing with amusement. "Yeah, maybe you thought if you threw enough money at us, Mom and Dad would finally love you as much as they love us," she added, her words slicing deep, reopening a wound I'd spent years pretending didn't exist. My parents didn't react, didn't reprimand her. Their silence roared louder than any defense they might have offered. They'd always indulged Carter and Harper, excused every reckless choice, every selfish demand. And me? I had been the fool, believing my efforts mattered. The scent of marinara and baked garlic lingered in the air, mocking me, a cruel reminder of what I'd foolishly hoped would be a comforting family night. Instead, I'd been ambushed, humiliated, and rejected in the same home I'd helped pay for. My chest tightened, anger simmering beneath the hurt, but I couldn't speak, couldn't find the words to fight back. Not yet. All I knew was this: something inside me had just cracked, and there was no going back. The dining room felt like a battlefield, the air thick with tension and unspoken accusations. I stared across the table at Carter and Harper, their smirks burning into me, and then at Mom and Dad, their faces hardening against me. My voice, when it finally came, was low but firm, trembling with a fury I could barely contain. "So, this is my reward for spending the last 4 years paying your mortgage?" I demanded, my eyes locking onto Mom's. "For the tuition bills, the $30,000 I sank into that lake cottage last summer. You're leaving me nothing because I made something of myself?" Mom rolled her eyes, her dramatic sigh cutting through the silence like a blade. "Wren, it's never about family with you," she snapped, her tone sharp enough to draw blood. "You always twist it into money, like that's all that matters." My fists clenched tighter beneath the tablecloth, nails biting into my skin. The wildfire in my cheeks flared hotter. "It was always about family for me," I countered, my voice rising despite my effort to keep it steady. "Every sacrifice I've made was because of family, because you asked, Mom, because you said family sticks together." Carter leaned back, crossing his arms with that infuriating smirk. "Oh, please, Wren," he said, scoffing. "You're acting like some martyr. Nobody forced you to help. You just liked playing the hero." Harper's quiet laugh followed, her glossy hair twirling around her finger as she tilted her head, eyes narrowed. "Yeah, maybe you thought if you threw enough money at us, Mom and Dad would finally love you as much as they love us," she said, her cruelty landing like a dagger in my chest. That old wound, the one I'd patched over with years of silent duty, tore open, raw and bleeding. I looked to Dad, hoping for something, anything, a flicker of regret, a word to shut them down. But he stayed silent, his gaze still glued to the silverware, as if it held the answers I craved. Mom didn't flinch either, her expression a wall of defiance. Their silence was louder than Harper's barbed words, louder than Carter's smug taunts. It screamed the truth I'd been too naive to see. I'd never been their priority. I'd been their convenience, their ATM, their fool. Anger flared through me, scorching away the last threads of patience. "You're right, Carter," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady, though it shook with the effort. "No one forced me. But from today onward, no one can guilt me into being this family's bank either. I'm done." I pushed my chair back, the scrape against the hardwood floor sharp and final. Their faces flickered with surprise. Carter's smirk faltered, Harper's eyes widened, Mom's mouth parted, but I didn't wait for a response. I grabbed my coat from the hallway, the front door swinging shut behind me with a definitive thud, cutting off their voices, their world. Outside, the cool Portland air hit me sharply, a slap of clarity against my burning cheeks. My heart still pounded, raw and aching with disbelief. I climbed into my car, slammed the door shut, and gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. Tears escaped, hot and relentless, streaming down my face as I started the engine. The drive back to my downtown apartment was silent, lonely, the hum of the road, my only companion. Memories flooded in, relentless. Each financial sacrifice, each canceled vacation, every night I'd stayed up juggling spreadsheets to keep them comfortable. All of it, done quietly, without complaint, out of a misguided sense of love and obligation. How stupid I'd been. I'd believed they appreciated me, valued me. But tonight had stripped that illusion away, leaving me naked and exposed. Back home, my apartment felt foreign, tainted by this revelation. I poured myself a generous glass of Cabernet, the expensive one I'd saved for something special. Tonight's bitter lesson seemed fitting enough. Settling onto the couch, I opened my banking app, the screen glaring back at me. There they were, $1,800 labeled Parents' Mortgage, $600 for their utilities, mocking me with their permanence. My thumb hovered, hesitating, then pressed cancel on both. Confirmations flashed, and a quiet defiance bubbled through my chest, sharp and intoxicating. The evening faded into night, but sleep wouldn't come. I replayed the dinner obsessively: Carter's arrogance, Harper's venom, Mom's dismissal, Dad's cowardice. Anger gave way to a deep, gnawing sadness. This wasn't just about money, it was emotional, a lifetime of feeling second best finally confirmed. Yet, beneath the hurt, something stirred, a flicker of liberation, a realization that my worth didn't hinge on their approval. As I drained the last drop of wine, I smiled bitterly into the darkness. They'd invited me home to cut me out, but they'd handed me something more valuable, the first step toward freedom. The wine glass sat empty on the coffee table, its deep red stain a faint shadow in the dim light of my apartment. I stared at it, the silence wrapping around me like a heavy blanket, both comforting and oppressive. The banking app confirmation still glowed on my phone. $1,800 for the mortgage, $600 for utilities, gone with 2 decisive taps. A rush of defiance had surged through me when I'd canceled them, sharp and intoxicating. But now, as the night deepened, a hollow ache settled in its place. I'd cut the financial chains, yes, but the emotional ones still tugged, frayed and stubborn. My phone buzzed suddenly, shattering the quiet. Mom's name flashed across the screen, and my stomach twisted into knots. I let it ring, unwilling, or maybe unable, to hear her voice so soon after the ambush. A minute later, the voicemail notification blinked impatiently. Against my better judgment, I pressed play. "Ren, please stop being so dramatic," her voice echoed, a familiar mix of exasperation and guilt cutting through the stillness. "Call me back. You know family doesn't treat each other like this." A hollow laugh escaped my lips, bitter and involuntary. Family, her favorite weapon, wielded to manipulate me into compliance. I deleted the message, my thumb pressing harder than necessary, and set the phone aside, determined not to crumble under her practiced guilt trips. The calls didn't stop. Over the next few days, they multiplied. First Mom, then Dad, their voices alternating between pleas and irritation. Carter and Harper joined in, their tones dripping with condescension. Harper's last message stung the deepest, her sarcasm biting through the speaker. "You're so selfish, Ren, jealous of us," she sneered. "Hope you're happy now." My finger hovered over the block button, hesitating only a moment before pressing it. One by one, I silenced them all. Mom, Dad, Carter, Harper. Peace fell over me, fragile and unfamiliar, like a stranger stepping into my home for the first time. Beneath it, though, a dull ache simmered, a quiet reminder of what I'd lost, even if it had never truly been mine. I threw myself into work, desperate for a distraction. Ben at construction's latest project, a sleek medical office complex in Sacramento, demanded my focus, and I welcomed it. Meetings, blueprints, client walkthroughs, they'd always been my strength, but now they felt like lifelines, pulling me away from the wreckage of that dinner. I extended my hours, volunteered for extra travel, anything to delay the emptiness of my newly quiet evenings. The apartment, once a sanctuary, now echoed with memories I couldn't outrun. Every payment I'd sent, every sacrifice I'd made, all for a family that saw me as a means to an end. By sunrise, exhaustion had drained me of tears. I dragged myself out of bed, brewed strong coffee, and sat numbly at the kitchen table. The morning news murmured in the background, but I barely heard it. Had I been blind all these years, or had I willingly ignored the signs, desperate to believe they valued me beyond my bank account? The truth settled heavy in my chest. I'd been their crutch, nothing more. Yet, in that realization, something flickered. A sense of liberation, faint but growing. I wasn't their ATM anymore. I wasn't their martyr. For the first time, my life could be mine, unshackled from their expectations. The coffee burned my tongue as I sipped it, grounding me in that fragile, defiant hope. They'd pushed me away, but in doing so, they'd set me free, whether they meant to or not. 3 weeks passed in a blur of work and uneasy calm. I'd begun to hope they'd accepted my silence, moved on without me, but deep down, I knew better. My family didn't let go quietly, not when their lifeline was at stake. That Friday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text that jolted me back to reality. "Family meeting tonight, Ren," it read, Diane's name stark against the screen. "You owe it to us to be there." My heart rate spiked, disbelief warring with outrage. I didn't owe them anything, not anymore. But curiosity, or maybe a misguided flicker of hope, gnawed at me. Before I could overthink it, my fingers typed a single word. Fine. Pulling into their driveway that evening felt surreal, like stepping into a memory I no longer belonged to. Carter's flashy motorcycle and Harper's obnoxiously blue Kia sat side by side, symbols of their entitlement gleaming under the streetlights. Dread twisted sharply in my gut as I approached the front door, now as foreign and unwelcoming as an enemy's fortress. Mom opened it, her forced smile barely masking irritation. "Ren, glad you decided to come," she said stiffly, ushering me inside. The living room smelled of stale coffee and tension. Aunt Ellen sat quietly in the corner, her warm eyes meeting mine with sympathy, though they held a wary edge. Her presence surprised me. She rarely waded into family conflicts. I took a seat across from her, heart racing as Carter and Harper strode in, openly glaring. Dad cleared his throat, his stern voice cutting through the thick air. "We called this meeting to clear the air, Ren," he began, his gaze hard. "Your mother and I thought you'd see reason by now. Obviously, we were mistaken." I bit back a sharp retort, clenching my fists tightly. "See reason?" My voice shook despite my efforts to control it. "You cut me out completely after everything I've done for you. Every mortgage payment, every tuition check, and you want me to see reason?" Mom snapped, rolling her eyes. "Stop exaggerating, Ren," she said, her tone biting. "You helped, sure, but it was your responsibility as the oldest. Carter and Harper deserve stability. It's not our fault you chose work over family." A bitter laugh burst from my lips, incredulous and raw. "I chose work over family?" I echoed, heat flooding my face. "I built my career because you needed my money. I skipped vacations, friendships, relationships, all so you could maintain this illusion of security." Carter scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. "Oh, spare us the dramatics, Ren," he said, leaning forward. "We never asked for your pity charity," Harper sneered, piling on. "Maybe if you weren't so busy being the family savior, you'd have your own life by now." Humiliation swelled painfully beneath my skin, their words a fresh wound. Aunt Ellen shifted uneasily, but she stayed silent, her quiet presence screaming louder than words. My parents didn't budge, faces stony, eyes averted, once again choosing complicity over defense. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping harshly across the hardwood. "You know what? You're right," I said, my voice shaking with controlled fury. "It was my mistake to believe I mattered here. I won't make it again." I turned for the door, Dad's voice cutting sharply behind me. "If you walk out now, Ren, Don't expect to be welcome back. I paused, hand gripping the knob, a lifetime of suppressed anger bubbling up. That's fine, I replied coldly. I've never felt welcome here anyway. The door slammed shut, the sound echoing in my ears as I stepped into the night. Outside, beneath the cold stars, tears burned hot trails down my cheeks. Each step to my car felt heavier, the realization sinking in. They'd never valued me, only what I gave them. At home, I locked my apartment door, the silence strangely comforting, a shield against their venom. A quiet knock startled me, hours later, adrenaline surging. Through the peephole, I saw Aunt Ellen, worry etched on her face. I opened the door wordlessly, and she pulled me into a warm embrace, her hold radiating comfort. "I'm sorry, Wren," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "They're wrong. You deserve so much better." Her words cracked something inside me, and tears flowed freely. She held me tightly, letting years of pent-up pain spill out. After a long silence, she spoke again, conviction steadying her tone. "They won't admit it, but they're scared. Scared of losing control, of facing their mistakes." Her wisdom anchored me, but the night took a darker turn when I returned from a Sacramento trip days later. My apartment door was sealed shut, thick foam expanding grotesquely around the frame, hard, deliberate vandalism. My stomach dropped. Carter. Rage boiled as I dialed building management, pacing furiously. Hours later, a locksmith chipped away the mess, muttering, "Someone really didn't want you inside." Security footage confirmed it. Carter, cap low, grinning as he sprayed my door shut. Betrayal struck deeper, raw and personal. With shaking hands, I saved the video, resolve hardening. Ellen's voice echoed in my mind as I filed a police report the next morning. "If you don't hold him accountable, he'll never learn," she'd said. This wasn't just family anymore. It was consequences. My family's outrage would come, but I was ready. The police report sat heavy in my inbox, Carter's smug face frozen in the security footage I'd handed over. My family's reaction was swift and predictable. A torrent of furious voicemails flooded my phone within hours. Mom's voice shrieked through the first one, quivering with rage. "Wren! What have you done? The bank called. They're threatening foreclosure. You had no right." My hands trembled as I listened, but I didn't flinch. "No right?" I muttered to myself, anger igniting. I called her back, my voice surprisingly calm despite the storm inside. "Mom, I paid your mortgage voluntarily, but after what happened, I'm done being your financial crutch." "You're our daughter," she shrieked, desperation leaking into her tone. "You owe us respect." The accusation stung, but I stood firm. "I owe you nothing," I countered sharply, the words tasting like defiance. "Respect isn't one-sided. You made your choice. Now I've made mine." She started to protest, but I cut her off. "I'm sorry you're upset, Mom, but I can't do this anymore. Goodbye." I hung up, my breath shallow, hands still shaking. The calls kept coming, Dad's gruff pleas, Harper's sarcastic jabs, even distant relatives chiming in with guilt trips. But I silenced my phone, empowered by the quiet rebellion settling over me. Days later, Dad called again, his voice brittle with forced calm. "Wren, what will it take for you to drop the charges against Carter?" he asked, the question hanging heavy between us. I didn't hesitate. $33,000, I replied instantly, the exact cost of repairs flashing in my mind. "That's extortion!" he barked, indignation rising. "No!" I answered coldly, surprising even myself with the strength in my voice. "It's consequences. Carter vandalized my home. Either he pays or he faces the charges. It's his choice." He hung up abruptly, the line going dead. The next morning, a transfer hit my account. $33,000 labeled bitterly as final payment. Victory surged through me, not for the money, but for the acknowledgement. Their actions had a price, and I'd forced them to pay it. Their resentment didn't fade, though. Aunt Ellen called a week later, her voice soft with urgency. "Ren, your mom's been talking," she said, pausing as if bracing me. "She's telling everyone you've abandoned them, that you're trying to make them homeless." My heart sank, the accusation twisting painfully in my gut. "That's ridiculous," I whispered, gripping the phone tighter. "They left me no choice." Ellen soothed me gently. "I know that, but others don't. They think you're selfish, that you stopped helping out of greed." The words landed like a punch, erasing years of quiet sacrifice, canceled vacations, delayed dreams, all to prop them up. I paced my apartment, anguish giving way to a fierce need to reclaim my voice. After years of silence, of swallowing their disrespect, I was done letting them define me. I sat at my laptop, fingers flying across the keys as I poured everything into a Facebook post. The mortgage payments, Carter's tuition, Harper's demands, the foam sealing my door. Every dollar, every ounce of resentment spilled onto the screen, raw and unfiltered. My hands trembled as I clicked post, releasing a decade of hurt into the open. Comments flooded in, shock, sympathy, outrage from some, sharp rebukes from others for airing private matters. Then came Mom's furious voicemail. "How dare you humiliate us like this, Ren?" "You have no right," she hissed, her indignation reigniting my fire. I called her back, my voice quivering but resolute. "I have no right?" I shot back, anger surging. "You lied to everyone, labeled me selfish after all I've done, just to save face. You abandoned me the moment you decided my efforts meant nothing." Her tone turned cold, venomous. "You've destroyed our family," she whispered. "No," I replied softly, the truth steadying me. "You did that yourself." I hung up, tears blurring my vision, guilt twisting painfully inside me. Had I gone too far? But beneath it, strength grew. I'd spoken my truth, and it was mine to own. Ellen knocked on my door that night, her concern etched deep as she stepped inside and hugged me tight. "Your post changed everything, Ren," she said gently, gripping my hand. "Some family members see it now. Diane hid your contributions all these years. They had no idea." Relief mingled with sadness as I sighed. "Does it matter anymore?" I asked, my voice small. "Yes," she insisted, her eyes fierce. "Your voice matters. You deserve recognition, not their shadow." Her words planted seeds of hope in my battered heart, easing the anguish. I wasn't hiding anymore. The truth was painful, but it was finally free, and so was I. 6 months slipped by, and the toxic shadow of my family faded into a distant hum. At first, the silence haunted me, a ghost of lost connections whispering through my quiet nights. But gradually, the sharp edges of betrayal softened, replaced by a sweeter realization. I'd broken free. I poured myself into work, earning a promotion that came with a corner office and a salary I'd once only dreamed of. My paycheck stayed mine, no longer siphoned away by mortgage payments or Carter's crises. Each dollar was proof that choosing myself wasn't selfish. It was survival. With that newfound freedom, I booked a 2-week trip to Italy, a dream I'd shelved for years out of guilt. Standing on a balcony overlooking Florence's glowing skyline at sunset, I felt liberation wash over me, pure and unshadowed by obligation. Back home, I joined a hiking group, reclaiming weekends I'd lost to family drama. On one hike, I met Mason Reed, his infectious smile and quiet thoughtfulness a balm to my still healing wounds. His presence filled a void I hadn't dared name, whispering that I was worthy of love without strings. One cold November evening, a knock pulled me from my thoughts. I opened the door to Aunt Ellen, her favorite sweater draped over her shoulders, 2 steaming cups of coffee in hand. She walked in wordlessly and hugged me tightly. "I'm proud of you, Ren," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes as she pulled back. You deserve all the happiness you can find. We settled on the couch, and she spoke softly. Your parents still blame you for everything. They won't change, but you've grown stronger. You chose yourself. That's bravery. Her words warmed me, though a pang lingered. I still think about them, I admitted quietly, emotions tightening my throat. Not because I regret walking away, but because it hurts. Knowing they never loved me, like I loved them. Ellen squeezed my hand gently. Sometimes family isn't blood, sweetheart, she said, her voice steady. It's who sees your worth. Her wisdom filled an emptiness I hadn't realized remained. And, as we talked into the night, sharing stories, laughter, I understood at last. Family was about respect, not duty. Whispers from relatives painted a grim picture of my parents' new reality. Mom at a diner's early shift, Dad hauling boxes at a hardware store, Carter jobless, Harper chasing Instagram fame. But on Christmas Eve, I chose joy, inviting friends over to celebrate independence. Ellen joined us, smiling knowingly as I embraced a life I'd never thought I deserved. As the guests left, I stood alone, gazing out at Portland's city lights twinkling against the dark. The pain of betrayal lingered, a fading scar, but it had shaped me into someone stronger, someone unafraid to honor my own worth. My parents had tried to punish me, cutting me out of their will, but their rejection had given me something priceless: freedom. They'd left everything to Carter and Harper, but they'd handed me the courage to choose myself. I smiled into the night, bittersweet but sure, and whispered a question to the stillness. What would you have done in my shoes? The city didn't answer, but its glow felt like a quiet affirmation. I'd found my way, and it was enough.